I wonder what constitutes grief. If grief only happens when someone dies, or if we can call it grief when pieces of ourselves are chipped away over time, trauma, pain, things that stay with us. For me, I have never felt loss as clearly as I have in losing pieces of myself to my illness. And it started with losing my health. At 11 years old, I stood up and I completely blacked out. My vision was gone, my ears were ringing, my hands and feet were tingling. I thought, God, I'm dying. Please don't let me die here. That was my first blackout, and my first experience with what would be chronic low blood pressure. And it would plague me as I went on to high school and college, mostly on the rowing team. I would end up, luckily seated, rowing at the end of a race, completely blind, sometimes not able to feel my hands or my feet, and just hoping that all of those symptoms would go away and not cause any permanent damage when I was done. It was also on that rowing team in high school at 16 that I lay back in my seat, and for the first time I felt this big hollow pop come from my pelvis. And that pop continued as I rowed more and more. And eventually it became the only relief from what would become chronic low back, pelvic, and hip pain. Pain which has continued for me for 6 years, almost unceasingly. And on some days, it's good enough that I can just sit and fidget in my seat, and maybe you won't notice, and maybe it won't distract my learning. But on other days, it keeps me from coming to class, it keeps me from sitting down at all, learning, or even sleeping. At 18, my next symptom came on. I learned what it was to be tired. I thought I knew that being a varsity athlete in college, but you really don't know what it is to be exhausted until your body wakes you up almost every night at 2 or 3 in the morning, screaming at you to move. You have no control over it. You think, I'm a rational human being, my mind should be able to control my body. That is not the case. My body was rebelling against me, and that was my first experience with restless leg syndrome, something that would continue to plague me for years. And my final big symptom came on at the age of 19, right before chronic pain stopped my rowing career. I was a varsity athlete at the time, and I was rowing about 25 hours a week. And a month or two had gone by where I was starting to feel these pains in my gut during practices, almost every day. It was like a knife in my stomach, and at one point the pain got so bad that luckily indoors on a rowing machine, I had to get up in the middle of the race, sprint out of the room, and try to later explain to my coach that I had been asking myself the question during that race. Am I about to vomit, or am I literally about to poop my pants in front of all of my teammates? It's funny now, for me at least. But when these things are compounding on each other and you're experiencing them every day for years, it takes a toll. It becomes a weight you have to put on when you walk out the door. It makes decisions for you. Can I go to class? Can I hang out with my friends? Can I go to that restaurant, or am I going to get sick and embarrass myself? At one point, I got to my lowest low, and I found myself not in an unfamiliar place, but on the floor, sobbing silently as I had done 100 times before from the pain. I had wanted to throw a temper tantrum, but I didn't want anyone else around me to know how bad it had gotten, or how much this disease had taken from me, or how I had become a person that I did not like or recognize. And I went into the bathroom to take a shower, but turning on the water just allowed me to let my sobs become audible. And I sobbed harder, and it became harder to breathe. And I clung to the counter with both hands, and I fell to my knees, and looking at myself in the mirror, every time I could catch my breath, I screamed silently, I hate you. I hate you, at the person staring back at me who didn't even feel like me anymore. And I thought, just for a second, when I couldn't catch my breath, that maybe I would rather die than be this person. And I knew I couldn't go on living that way. And that fear turned into determination. And I went from doctor to doctor looking for answers, looking for someone to open the door and tell me that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't seeking attention, that I wasn't putting together this myriad of symptoms in my own mind. And then it happened. I walked into the office of my 14th doctor. And in speaking to the physician's assistant and telling her about my chronic pain, as I had done 100 times before, I used a word that someone had said to me in passing, hypermobility. My joints were hypermobile, I said. And the physician's assistant was very nice. She said, oh, okay, so you have joint hypermobility syndrome. I'll write that down. Let's move on. So it was nothing. And it wasn't until later, at home, alone with Google, that I got curious. And so I looked up joint hypermobility syndrome. And what I found was joint hypermobility syndrome is also called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 3. And it is a rare genetic disease that affects my collagen, my connective tissue. And that was the moment that the door opened for me. I finally knew that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't seeking attention. All the symptoms that had plagued me were right there on the page in front of me as symptoms of this syndrome. I wasn't alone, and I had the power of my story back. And that was liberating. But it was more complicated than that. Because staring at that page alone with Google, I discovered that the symptoms that had plagued me for years would likely never leave me, and instead become my permanent reality. I learned that I was irrevocably damaged. And in that space, I discovered that I should not have children. Fundamental decisions for my life were being made without my consent, and that was suffocating. And that is grief for me, being drowned and being freed.